Hey everyone, Norm from Tested here at Wonderfest in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm drawn to the miniatures here. These sets are made by this gentleman, Preston, the bearded miniaturist.
Bearded miniatures, that's me.
All right, so tell me about the process of making the Frasier project here.
All right, well, I'm a big fan of the show Frasier, and I have a lot of props and memorabilia from the television show, and they were all in a display case. And I thought it would be really cool to have the fireplace because it's so iconic. So I just wanted a bookshelf fireplace for my display, and I built it in like the worst possible way because I'd never built anything before. So this fireplace is full of foam, it's full of plaster of Paris. I was chiseling away at it, and once I finished it, I was like, this process was really difficult and it was really fun.
But you couldn't stop.
I couldn't stop. I'm like, I want to do the entire apartment now. And so I found the floor plan online and I watched hours of footage of the show, which I was already a big fan of, so that part wasn't difficult. And I found other iconic pieces and I just started making them. And I had two things in the beginning that I wanted to make sure. I didn't buy any pre-made pieces because
Nothing is prefab.
Nothing is prefab. With a couple exceptions I'll tell you about. But I didn't want to buy any pieces for it. I wanted to make it all by hand. That was my first rule. My second rule was if I made it and I thought I could do it better, I had to destroy the first piece because I didn't want to keep tinkering until it was just okay.
Yeah.
Destroy the first piece, remake it till it's good. The Eames recliner, the piano, and Eddie the dog were gifts from fans of my Facebook group that they sent in. So I included those. It breaks my first rule that I have to make it, but I really like to incorporate fans into my work, and that was one way I did it on this one. So it was a few pieces. I'm like, you know what? They fit perfect. They look great. So I kind of bent my rule a little bit on that.
A couple things really strike out at me. One, the fact that you start off with a fireplace and you chose a scale that ended up working out. Like if that was, double the size, your miniature would be much more massive.
It was a total coincidence that the most common scale in dollhouse and miniature is 1/12.
There it goes.
I used that because I'm like, I can judge the actors' heights, and I can 1 foot to 1 inch worked for me in my mind. I had no idea that was a real thing until the whole thing was built, and they're like, yeah, that's the most common scale. I'm like, you got to be kidding me! It was a coincidence.
And how appropriate that you've turned the thing into a coffee table. Essentially, right?
Yeah, essentially it could be a coffee table. Yeah, I needed a way to display it to get it up to a height where people could kind of look into it. So I put these legs on it, and it just worked. And I got lucky with everything that I did to it.
Talk to me about texturing things like the floor and the carpet, because I assume it's a lot of mixed media. You're using all sorts of materials.
Yeah, definitely mixed media. So these parquet floor pieces come in little individual squares, and you just have to stain them and clear coat them and cut them and put them where they go. Actually, the carpet was really hard to find carpet to scale that was the color I wanted. Right. So that's actually a towel from the dollar store.
Okay.
And I sprayed the back of it with that 3M to make it hard like carpet backing, and then I glued it down and cut it into place. So I was using things, I didn't know what professionals used to make this kind of stuff. I just knew what I could use that worked for me.
Yeah.
And the Berber carpet, which is mentioned in the show, I mean, to scale, that's a great scale. You don't look at it and think, wow, the pile of that carpet's too big for that room. It looks perfect. So it was trial and error, a lot of it, which is why it took over 2 years to build this, because I didn't know what I was doing,
Are there good reference photos of behind the scenes of what that set looked like, and how does that relate to your interpretation of it?
Okay, so there's 3 or 4 different pictures of the actual
the full set.
Yeah. They're kind of dark. They're from the 90s. They're not the best. But really just watching, and I'm such a fan of the show that I'm able to remember where I saw what in what episode. So like, for instance, this bookcase back there. I can remember different episodes where I'm like, okay, this took place in front of the bookcase. That was this episode. I need to go watch between minutes 13 and 15. Yeah. And I mean, I'm kind of crazy like that. So I know where to look for that stuff.
Yeah. Did you want to at any point kind of show the filmmaking, the set of it, beyond it? Or did you want to kind of, this is like the reality of Frasier? I wanted 2 things. One, I wanted to be able to look at it and feel like I was fully immersed in that world. Yeah.
I wanted fans of the show that were as big of fans as me to look at it and not be able to pick it apart. Another thing was I was a little bit limited on the space because I wanted to enter it into the Kentucky State Fair when it was finished. So if you notice, the kitchen is a little bit different than it would be on the show, and people comment on that. And the reason is because at the time this was made, if I would have made the kitchen the way it was supposed to be made, I wouldn't have qualified.
Right.
So I wouldn't have been able to enter it. So I could have done like a picture on the front right here, just did a photograph, or I could kind of massage it in a way that still fit the scale and worked.
Yeah.
And that's what I chose to do. And I've left it to where I could cut this piece off and add later if I wanted to. So that was, I entered it into the fair and I won that year.
Oh,
so
congratulations.
it turned out it was a good decision.
Yeah. Well, going on from this, it sounded like 2 years, you wrapped this up. You didn't want to stop though. Your passion for the show led you to another set, another miniature.
It did. And now we're moving on to the next one.
Wow. This looks way more elaborate. Multiple rooms, facades, fronts. Like, was this a real filming location, or was this also on a stage?
This was on a sound stage also. So it's a lot more elaborate, a little more polished, if you'll notice, than the Frasier project. Like I said, that was my first one, and I look at it now as an artist, and I'm like, I wish I would have done that scene different, but I'm leaving it because it's part of the progression that you can see when you look at the pieces. That was the first one. The second one polishes a little better, and I chose to leave that, plus the blemishes it gets from being on tour. It's part of the character and the history of the piece, so I'm leaving them as they are. But yes, this one's it's a little bigger, and you'll notice size-wise, it sticks out a little further because I met with the fair board, and I said, hey, can we change these? And we changed them based on the dimensions of this build. So the new rules at the Kentucky State Fair dimensionally were designed to be able to include this build.
Wow. I love that you have actually dividing walls and like you can actually peer through the different spaces. It feels more inhabited.
Yeah, being able to see it from multiple angles was kind of a cool concept. There's areas that you don't see in the television show. For instance, you never see the kitchen in the television show. But I wanted to make it really dingy and grimy as like a juxtaposition of the swanky, how cool are we coffee shop in the front. You come around back and you're like, whoa, I didn't know that's where you were making my scones, you know. So I got to take a lot of creative liberty with that. And then this area up here in the television show, all you see is this door on this side, which tells you it's a woman's restroom. But doing shows like this, I didn't think it was very visually appealing to have just restroom after restroom on this whole corner. So I took another creative liberty, turned this into a record store, put some of my favorite music in there from that era, hand painted this mural on the side, and just kind of added little bits and pieces. I still kept it to the show. Like there's different little Easter eggs from the show, like the Kellyanne Grunther Cat Foundation was from an episode, and some of the records that are in there contain little bits of music that were talked about on the show or things like that. So that was a really fun.
Absolutely.
A really
you did
fun
this,
part.
and how to do it the competition.
It won first place.
It won first place.
It did.
You have a little experience of that because you were telling me you were also on a miniature reality show, miniature building reality show.
I was, yeah. I went to Canada and I competed on a television show called Best in Miniature. I was on season 2.
Oh.
So I was a finalist on that show.
Wow, how was that experience?
It was fantastic. I wasn't expecting it, but they'd seen my work and reached out to me and they were like, hey, how would you like to do this under time constraints? And I'm like, I don't think I can. And they're like, here's what we're looking at. Here's the show. And I'm like, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm not going to pull any punches. I'm going to go there. I have a vision. And whether it takes me the 8 hours for that day that I get, or I can't do it, I'm not going to deviate from that vision. So I went there with a plan. I made this epic 1960s abandoned house. They moved out after the nuclear bomb went off, and there's urban decay and grunge and mildew, and it's fantastic. And I got to see my vision come to life on that show. So.
And you got to meet your people.
I got to meet my people. Yeah, I did.
Where can people find more information about building miniatures, like where, for the miniature enthusiasts?
I would recommend reaching out to your local club, seeing if you have, like here in Louisville, we have the Louisville Miniature Club. There's a National Association of Miniature Enthusiasts. Those branches are geared more towards dollhouse type miniatures, which this kind of is. This is a new environment for me. I wasn't sure how I would fit in with the figures and the war and the Star Wars and the different stuff. But you know what? We're all using the same medium, which is our imaginations. We're trying to bring something to life that we can't really tangibly go and see and do and touch. So under that umbrella, it fits in perfect.
Absolutely.
So reaching out to local clubs, national clubs, and I had no knowledge that this was going to take off the way that it did. In fact, honestly, when I first started making a couple pieces, I posted them in Frasier fan club groups on Facebook, and I hesitated to do that because I'm like, I'm not a dollhouse dude. You know, this is a little embarrassing. But people loved it, and I just embraced that, hey, this is what I do now. And it really took off. So, you know, just have the courage to throw it out there, do your thing, do it the best you can do it, and people will appreciate it, no matter what level you find that your best falls at.
Congratulations on all your success.
Thank you so much.
Preston, it's a pleasure to meet you.
I really appreciate it.
Hope
Pleasure to meet you too.
Had a wonderful show.
Thanks so much.
Hey everyone, Norm here with Kyle Clark. Kyle,
It's so nice to meet you.
pleasure to meet you.
Yes, sir.
And I'm so glad we found you because I want to ask about this incredible diorama.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yes. It is a moment in time. It is
the
making of a real TV show.
A real TV show.
Okay.
Yes.
I admit I'm not familiar with Land of the Giants.
A lot of people will say that. It is an Irwin Allen production. He did Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Time Tunnel, Land of the Giants, and of course Lost in Space.
That's the one. Yes.
And Land of the Giants was a particular favorite simply because in the time period he made these shows, I actually saw it on network television, which is amazing. You know, and I just fell in love with it. It's got a little bit of everything, a great cast, a fantastic spaceship, wonderful stories.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little over the top, but that's Mr. Allen. So,
yeah. And you work in production, you work in broadcast, so you must have an affinity for
absolutely
behind
the
the
whole
scenes.
absolutely. And it's funny, when I first did that, I didn't even really think about it, and so, a friend of mine brought that up, and it's exactly true.
Yeah.
Lighting and sound and everything your guys do, you know, I love it.
So walk me through the scene. Walk me through
Yes.
what's going on in this episode, what's going on in front of the camera, behind the camera, and how you fabricated this.
Well, it's funny. It's not necessarily a particular episode, but a particular era, and there's lots of little in jokes in it. If you're a Giants fan, you get it. If you're not, it's just part of the scenery. But this was several episodes. One was a trapper who had dropped his gun, and of course they took it and they were using it to defend themselves. That's the famous giant hand that Irwin Allen was in love with, used in every episode. Another episode used from time travelers from the future, of course, have a space pod from Lost in Space, no explanation, so we had to put that in there. And it's sort of just, it's sort of a mishmash of a lot of these little props and little things that happen within the series. My favorite part of this, because as being an Irwin Allen show, you have a spaceship with way too many sets that can fit into one spaceship. So I did it anyway. So I added a radio room and the engine room and a fuel room. And so even though this won't fit into the set, in the television show, those rooms were used in every episode.
So these interior sets theoretically are in the cavity of that ship.
That's correct. And that's part of the fun of it, because it's like, you know, at least the TARDIS from Doctor Who made perfect sense.
Right? Yes.
So this is just suspense of disbelief, I think.
Did your oversized props, did that inform the scale of how you want to do this? So
yes.
Everything is 1-to-1 when it's oversized?
Yes, and I was lucky to I found that hand on Amazon. I think it was a ring display or something. I went, of course, it's perfect. So just little things like that just to make it work. Randy Cooper, who is a wonderful model maker, he did the interior as a kit for me.
Oh.
And this was the ship was 3D printed by another company. Everything else is scratch built, because I love, you know, just trying to figure those out. How do you make Fresnels? How do you make light stands? And, you know, the rest of it is just, it was kind of fun to do.
Well, the other thing I love about it is how you lit it. And I'm recognizing these like bookcase lights that work as little spotlights.
These just came out from Amazon, and I saw that and I went,
They're
no
so
way.
good.
And they aim, and you can do all these. And so I cut the gels.
I
stole the gels from the TV station. We'll cut that part out, of course. And put them in. And yeah, it's wonderful. So you've got pretty much a hot set, and you got a closed set over here. So I didn't want to do any lights. I didn't want to do any of that stuff. But it still has the luggage and all the things from the cast in their particular chairs, and just little details like that.
Yeah. What's your background in model making? Is this Is this
I have been doing this all my life. I do a little show on YouTube called Backlot Spaceport, and I tour famous sci-fi sets, you know.
Oh, wonderful.
And the first episode I did was Land of the Giants. This is kind of like a 10-year anniversary for me for doing that show. And so I love spaceships, but I love building sets.
Yeah.
Sets are my passion. And
Yeah.
so this was a perfect thing for me to do. It's a little combination of everything.
I found that people who love those shows made in the 60s, 70s, and 80s love as much the story of the studios and all the behind the scenes, and this really pays tribute to that.
Thank you very much.
Captures that moment.
It was an era where the big budget movies didn't do well for 20th Century Fox.
Yeah.
And so the television shows came along that were going to bring some revenue in, but the revenue wasn't great. So Mr. Allen had to cut some corners, but look at what he did with what he had. It's amazing.
So charming, so charming. What's next? What are the other shows that you're passionate about that you want to turn into a miniature?
I would love to do Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
But I mean, big spaceship, big. So I'm thinking about that and a couple other things, but who knows? I mean, I'm one of those kind of odd artists that I get inspired by something. I'll see something on television and go, okay, scratch that, we're doing that, you know? ADHD.
Your many obsessions overlapping each other.
Absolutely.
Oh, well,
absolutely.
Kyle, it's a pleasure to meet you.
It is a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Thank you for sharing the model.
Absolutely. You guys take care.
Thank you for watching that video. I want to tell you about our Demerit Badges, because we know that being a maker is a lifelong enterprise of trying new things and learning new skills, and it is also about repeatedly messing everything up. And we like to celebrate that because failure is not just an option, it is intrinsic to the creative process. And to that end, we have 3 new bundles of Demerit Badges right now on tested-store.com. We've got your Shop Tool Fails Demerit Badge bundle up here on top. Here in the middle, we have the Everyday Whoops Demerit Badge bundle. And at the bottom, we've got my favorite, the Shit Happens Demerit Badge bundle. You can get any one of these bundles, and we are considering offering a bundle of all 24, not those, of all 24 Demerit Badges we have released, but we're not sure what to call it. You have a suggestion? Put it in the comments.